Hey everyone, as we start to grow more food, dehydrate, preserve it, I think a lot of people start to wonder, well, what do I do with that food? Especially if I don't have enough to make a full meal, as we can see here. Well, I'm going to show you one of my favorite things to do, which is to make soup. So I'm going to be making a beef, mushroom, and barley soup. The only things I had to buy from the store for this was the meat and mushrooms. So the first thing I'm going to do, which I think you guys can hear clicking now, is I'm going to heat up like a teaspoon or two of oil to brown off the meat. We're going to try and like par cook it so we don't have to cook it all the way through. It'll finish in the soup, but our first step is going to be getting this in the Dutch oven or pot or whatever you have to start browning. Okay, while that is browning, it's on a medium heat. I'm going to dry brush my mushrooms and cut them up. I'm also going to season some of the beef with just a little bit of salt and pepper, maybe some of the garlic powder or onion powder that we made by dehydrating, but very basic seasonings here, because when we combine them all in the pot, that's when we can really add our flavors. But for now, we just want to keep it basic. So what I mean by dry brushing is something that I recently learned. Mushrooms do not like moisture when you're dry cooking them, so without any liquid, they sometimes do a little bit better. So what I like to do is just take a paper towel and brush off all parts of the mushroom instead of rinsing them to get the dirt off. This is definitely preference. You know, if you still want to wash your mushrooms, that's totally fine. Just make sure you pat them dry before using them to avoid an increase in moisture and longer cook times. Sometimes they can get like rubbery if you don't get all the moisture out. So this just adds a little bit more flavor by doing it in a quote dry brush method. Okay, once everything is starting to brown, again, it does not need to be cooked all the way through at this point because we are going to return it back to the pot. I'm going to scoop out the beef, but leave all that juice down at the bottom. I'm going to use that liquid that's left and a little bit of broth to rehydrate our carrots and celery that we've previously dehydrated as a base for the soup. Okay, so we have our dehydrated carrots and celery in here. As you can tell, there's a little bit more liquid than you probably would have at this point in a soup. Normally you want the carrots, onion, celery to soften and then add liquid. But because we've already dehydrated them, we need to rehydrate them so that they're not like crunchy and chewy in our soup. You can also add onion at this point to add those flavors, or if you're doing pieces of garlic. But we're gonna let this reduce down a little bit so that those carrot, celery can absorb all that lovely broth that we've started. Okay, once the liquid has reduced, we're then going to just take handfuls and add our mushrooms and continue cooking. We might need to add some more liquid in here. And if you're wondering, wasn't that pot blue before? It was. I was irresponsible and let it burn. Don't be like me. Anyway, add mushrooms, a little bit more liquid, let it cook. Again, liquid has reduced. It looks a little muddy, but it's all flavor, I promise. We're going to continue to just stir until the mushrooms are soft, and we can also season at this stage. Actually, every time you add something to the pot, whether that is the carrots or the mushrooms, when we go to add the beef back in, you should season with a little bit of salt and pepper, garlic, onion, things like that to taste. And I also feel by doing this with less broth, it was really able to drag out the moisture out of the mushrooms. That's what we mean by dry cooking. We're not adding liquid in. And now that part, we're going to add liquid. So we're going to take the beef that we started earlier, add that back in. Remember, this is not fully cooked because it's going to finish cooking in the soup. We're going to give it a good stir, and then we're going to add our broth and some water and some seasonings on top and let this all cook together. We're almost done. This has been simmering for about 20-30 minutes. Look at the beautiful color we have. The beef is par cooked, still has a little bit to go, and that's because we're going to add our final 1 cup of barley. I know it doesn't feel like a lot, but this is going to expand. And again, we're doing a soup, so we do want some broth in between. We're gonna mix this in and continue cooking until the barley is tender. So maybe another 30 minutes or so. All right, now that we're done, we have this beautiful colored soup that is full of grains and beef and carrots. Cost us about $12, $10 for the meat, $2 for the mushrooms. Everything else that we had preserved or we had made. I'm even gonna take some dried thyme and just add it on top as a nice little extra bit. So, you know, it's an option. It's one way to use our preserved foods to make meals for ourselves. So thanks everyone for following along. Hopefully I grow many more carrots this year and we can make even more soups and items and things like that. So stay tuned and I'll keep you all updated. Bye everyone.